How's it, everyone? Welcome to OpenCourt. Today, I'm talking about a Solinco string. No, not Tour Bite or Hyper G or Confidential. You guys already know all of those strings. Today, I'm talking about one of my personal favorite Solinco strings and one of the most underrated strings on the market. That's Solinco Revolution. Let's check it out. So first of all, I just want to say that this Solinco Revolution comes in this really nice deep blue color, and it looks really nice in a lot of rackets. Solinco strings are known for their incredible control. This string is no different. Solinco Revolution, in my opinion, is a very great control string, control-oriented string that generates a lot of spin. The string profile for this string is 5-sided, pentagonal. Tour Bite, Confidential, and Hyper G, I believe, are all square-shaped or 4-sided. I don't know if that extra side really makes a huge difference when it comes to spin generation. It may grab the ball a little bit better, but it's more about the slide and the snapback, which this string is exceptional with. For a shaped poly, when I was stringing it up, I noticed that it was sliding across. When I was stringing the crosses, it was gliding across the mains very easily, and that slippery snapback translated onto the court. So I was really excited to get this strung up with my rackets and get on the court with it. Alright guys, I'm here on court with the Solinco Revolution. I have it strung up in my head, Graphene 360 Radical Pro at 52 in the mains and 50 in the cross. I've used a bunch of Solinco strings before in the past, but I've never used this Revolution before, so I'm really excited to see how it plays. Let's get on the court. Okay, so the response is pretty stiff right off the bat, but that's not unusual for strings, polyester strings in general, especially Solinco. If you're a fan of the Solinco Confidential string, you'll know that that string requires a little break-in period before it settles into the racket. So it is stiff initially off the strings. It usually loosens up after about 15 to 30 minutes, I'd say. I'm hoping that's the case with this string, otherwise it is pretty stiff even at 52 pounds. But because it's so stiff, it has great control. It's got a decent amount of power for something so stiff though. I can feel my ball actually going deep in the court. And it's got a lot of control. So for those of you big hitters from the baseline, I think this will definitely serve you well. Keep your balls in the lines. It's got a decent amount of spin because of the ridges. So right now I'd say this string lies somewhere between Confidential and Tour Bite in terms of stiffness. I think it's a little stiffer than Confidential, but a little softer than Tour Bite. Tour Bite definitely plays more crisp. Okay, wow. For a stiff string, this thing pockets pretty well at the net. I can feel the ball sinking into my string bed when I'm hitting that volley in front. So I think for those of you touch players looking for a little bit more touch and finesse out of your string, this would be good for you. Yeah, I really like the crisp response. It feels a lot crisper at the net than Confidential. I'm not a huge fan of Confidential at net because I think it's a little too mushy. I know it's a really popular string, but I didn't particularly love it at the net. This string feels much more crisp, much better ball pocketing at the net, I'd say. So for those of you doubles players or net players, I think this will probably be a better option for you than Confidential. Maybe not quite as good as Tour Bite because that's the crispest, liveliest playing string in Solinco's lineup, but the Revolution feels really good. Very solid string. I really like the response at net. So after playing with this Solinco Revolution in my Head Radical Pro for about a week and a half, I got about 5 sessions in with this. I was right when I said that this string needed a break-in period. Once the string settled in, there was a huge difference between the first and the second play session. I felt the control was much better the second time around and definitely not as stiff. For some reason, I was just able to dial into more of my shots, especially on my forehand returns, forehand ground strokes from the baseline. The control on this string is phenomenal. So starting out with what I did like about this string, and I'm not kidding here when I say I liked virtually everything about it. This Solinco Revolution has an excellent combination of power, spin, and control. It's rare to see a string that excels both in power and control because that's usually opposite ends of the spectrum. But the Revolution, I felt, gave me a pretty decent amount of power, especially on the flat serves, but also the spin levels were really good, so it helped also on the kick serves, the slices, and it helped me to keep the ball inside the baseline when I was taking big rips from the baseline. I definitely enjoyed the crisp, stiffer response. I do like a stiffer string. The Revolution's response is my second favorite after the Tour Bite. I think the Tour Bite has an excellent, lively feel. The Revolution doesn't quite hit that. It's a little bit more muted than the Tour Bite, but I definitely still felt the ball well on the angle shots, drop shots, and all of those finesse shots that I like to hit. The biggest surprise for me with the Revolution was the ball pocketing. Although Revolution is a stiff string, it ranks high on the stiffness scale, I felt the ball really sinking into the string bed, especially on my volleys. And as a serve and volley player, I was able to easily place the volleys where I wanted to go. When I was approaching the net after my serve and the ball came low at my feet, I was able to dig it up and return it deep into my opponent's court. It gave me the confidence at the net that a lot of muted and dampened strings don't really give me. As I said earlier, there is an initial break-in period. Fresh off the stringer, Revolution is pretty stiff, and I can see a lot of people probably giving up after the first 30 minutes on this string, but trust me, stick with it. Once it breaks in, it feels phenomenal. The tension stays stable for a really long time for a polyester. I didn't feel a sharp drop-off until well after 2 weeks of playing with this string. So for a polyester string to perform average in power, spin, and control is a rarity. It also holds tension very well. I did not feel that the Revolution had any one weakness. For me personally, the Solinco Revolution is my second favorite Solinco string right after the Tour Bite. I wish that Solinco Revolution came in an 18 gauge. The thinnest gauge that it comes in is 17 at 125 millimeters. I do like a thinner string because it gives me more feel, more response, more power and spin. If they came out with a 120 gauge of Revolution, I would definitely want to try that. As far as the cons go for Solinco Revolution, there really is nothing negative I can say about it. If I was being nitpicky, the string was pretty stiff. Fresh off the stringer, it did feel pretty boardy. I felt like I had to swing extra hard to get the ball anywhere deep in the court, but it loosens up after about an hour. But for that first hour, man, Revolution can be a bit rough to play with. I do not recommend this string if you have tennis elbow. Also, the longer you play with it, although the tension doesn't really drop, it does get more and more muted. That crisp liveliness that I experienced at the beginning, it sort of goes away after a couple of weeks, but then it becomes a typical polyester string that plays great from the baseline. If you want to take big rips at the ball from the baseline, it does become more muted. So for some players, it might actually be better for you after the tension starts to drop a little bit and it becomes more muted. But still, Revolution is a very stiff string. I think it's stiffer than both the Hyper G and the Confidential. If you do have a sensitive elbow, I do not think you will enjoy this string. You might be better off trying a Hyper G soft or a Tour Bite soft, or just staying away from polys in general. So I recommend the Solinco Revolution to people who have a strong and healthy arm and want a polyester that excels in control, power, and gets some decent spin while holding tension for a decent amount of time. When I describe it like that, this seems like the perfect poly. It's not. There's no such thing as a perfect string, but for me personally, this is pretty damn close. Because for me, it performs above average across the board in the most important categories of power, spin, control, and tension maintenance. The one area that it's below average is the comfort level. With that said, I didn't feel that it was a harsh string, but I don't have any arm problems. But if you do, stay away from any polyester. Thank you for watching this review of the Solinco Revolution. If you like this content and want to see more like it, be sure to overhead smash that like and subscribe button, and I'll see you on the court.